Hi, I'm Ruben Kronig of Vineyard Time on Martha's Vineyard, and I wanted to answer a question that one of our collectors posed the other day in our shop. He asked, with all the vintage Rolexes commanding such a high premium right now in the secondary market, how come they always look so much cheaper than the new Rolexes? I thought that was an interesting question, and the real core of the answer is that Rolex started out as a tool watch. It didn't start out as a luxury watch. It started out as something you wore diving. It started out as something that was actually meant to be your tool. It wasn't meant to be a luxury. A lot of brands started out as luxury watches historically. They started out as a gentleman's watch. They made gold cases. They were really meant to be something special for a special occasion. That wasn't Rolex. Rolex was what Jacques Cousteau wore on diving expeditions. It was an amazing tool. It was like an off-road car. It was beautifully built for what it was. It was meant to go diving. So when you're looking at materials choices and you're looking at the evolution of that watch, you have to look at it from that perspective, from the perspective of a tool. So when you'd send your watch in and you'd have it repaired, Rolex would change things. So for instance, the Bakelite bezel. Some of the early Rolexes had Bakelite bezels. It then transitioned to an aluminum bezel insert, which then transitioned to the really luxurious looking ceramic bezel that you see today. Those early Bakelite bezels were really fragile. They were brittle. And while they looked really pretty, they didn't hold up well. So when they got sent into Rolex, Rolex switched them. Just like when you'd bring in your car for repair, if something needed to be recalled or something didn't work or the tires needed to be changed, they'd change it. However, the problem with that today is that collectors, vintage collectors, really look at originality. So when you're looking at these Rolex dive watches, they got dove in, got water damage, got cracked and shattered and scratched, that can be a big issue because a lot of stuff has been replaced, not even always by the collector, a lot of times by Rolex, but it still hurts the value on the secondary market. So even though you're looking at these Rolex watches as being a super collectible object, understanding that they started as a tool really lends a lot of understanding to how the quality has evolved over the years. They switched from a hollow link bracelet to a solid link bracelet because it held up better. Those early stretch bracelets broke. They didn't necessarily hold up well. But now collectors prize those little distinctions, those little differences that created that evolution. You have to look at the fact that in the 70s, when the quartz watch really came out, we had a real quartz revolution, and a lot of brands went belly up. And Hayek, the founder of Swatch, bought a lot of those namesakes, and he reinvented the whole idea of the watch market. He said that watches weren't really the typewriter to the computer. What they were was a whole different category. Rather than being outdated, mechanical watches represented something intriguing, something interesting. It had the craftsmanship and the ingenuity of these incredible masters, and they should be collected and appreciated for that. So when you're looking at the 80s, the 90s, into the 2000s, when collectors are starting to really buy these watches from a standpoint of collecting, from a standpoint of wearing on a day-to-day, rather than buying it as a tool, as something to use when they're going underwater or when they're diving, that really influenced how these brands changed their trajectory and their production. So you're looking at the Rolex of today, which predominantly appeals to an everyday wearer, and yeah, they've found ways to make a lot more gold watches, or steel watches that have ceramic bezels, sapphire crystals. That evolution has been twofold. Part of it's been because they're hitting at a more luxurious base and not just being a tool, and part of it is they've seen what worked and what didn't. And some of those things that they've developed over time didn't work as well. And that's one of those interesting parts when you're looking at a brand and its heritage. Now, I personally really like vintage watches. I recognize that some of those new watches have some of the characteristics that we now associate with luxury. And the vintage Rolexes might not feel as luxurious, but I really love that it's something different. It's something that not everyone has. When you're wearing an early piece with a rare variation, whether it's Rolex or another brand, you have something really interesting, something that can't be reproduced. They can't make any more of these. You can make as many watches in 2020, 2021 as you want. But you can't make as many 1950s watches again. They are what they are. A lot of them got destroyed. A lot of them didn't hold up. A lot of them got beaten or abused or disposed of. And that's what's so interesting for me about the vintage watches. So when you're looking at the vintage watch market and how it's commanding such high premiums, you have to understand that some of that premium comes to that intrigue. It's that rareness, it's that desirability. But it isn't fundamentally just about the intrinsic value of the parts. It's the heritage. And understanding Rolex as a tool watch, rather than starting out as a luxury watch, really gives you a lot of insights into why the quality change may be so distinctive. And why when you're looking at a newer watch, you might feel like it's heavier, like it has some of the attributes you associate with quality. Whether it's the quick set movement or the sapphire crystal instead of the acrylic crystal. But if you look at that as an evolution of their tool in learning these new techniques, and you look at the icon as a development of all of its stages, that's pretty cool. And it's an interesting way to look at it. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll have some more fun content for you soon. Thanks so much.